questions. Here we go. So if you do have questions as we hang out, or however long you can hang out, just keep in mind, like, we don't want to like share super personal details on a recording with the group. So any of those can be emailed or discussed personally. So share my screen and just kind of talk through a few things. So I do see some familiar faces, names. Thanks for being here. But I've invited sophomores and juniors, so there will be families, students in different places in the journey. But I just wanted to do a quick overview as far as, you know, life after Libertyville, and just to, you know, to start, a quick reminder that there are lots of options out there. LHS does have a very college going culture, 4-year, 2-year colleges, but the CRC, the College Resource Center, where I work out of with Ms. Cardinale and Ms. McGurn, we certainly are here to support the college options, military options, apprenticeship, career training, students heading right into the workforce, along with gap year. I have some really amazing discussions with students about gap year options, even just recently. So just a reminder that we are here for all. Next quick slide, just a quick overview, a glance of the fact that the post-high school planning process, I tried to capture it into these kinds of 4 sections or bubbles. So the preparation phase, which in some ways starts, you know, at a very young age. I could jokingly say even like birth, preschool, you know, when you were reading to your children, that tech is kind of like post-high school preparation. But preparation, and then moving into exploration, which is certainly where your student is now in the high school process of exploring interests, potential plans, hopes, dreams, all the things. And then heading into summer before senior year, and certainly the fall of senior year, you're in that application area, that kind of mad dash timeline, September, October, trying to hit November 1 deadlines. So that is its own slice of the timeline. And then we're kind of sitting in a big part of the evaluation stage right now with seniors. So evaluation of those true options. What schools have I been admitted to? What are the costs of the options in front of me, etc. So I'm just trying to clarify where those spots are. As I mentioned, preparation, obviously that all includes, you know, early childhood, elementary, middle school, but preparing for those post-high school options, I'm transcript centric. So no piece of an application or a pathway process is going to ignore the transcript of a student. So that includes courses selected from 9th grade on. What do those patterns look like? What is the pattern of rigor? So challenge, and all of these bits and pieces are based on what's offered. So your student is not going to be technically like compared for admission or acceptance to a program based on a neighboring school's offerings, or even against a student within Libertyville High School. But there's a lot of consideration around the program that the student's expressing interest in, those course patterns that kind of match that program, and then what was offered to the student, what were they able to do and take, and what did they dive into. And then of course senior schedule still matters. A lot of applications will be processed without senior grades, but the senior schedule still certainly is reviewed, known, and part of those applications. So so no kind of ducking out on senior year, if I have my say. So that transcript review, and then more steps in that preparation process is that continuation for your student of reflection and discovery of those activities, interests, daydreams, right? Like what does life look like after high school? What can I see? What do I want it to be? The exploration phase is, again, that kind of, we're diving into that sophomore, certainly junior year. So taking advantage of career interest inventories, whether that's school related and Naviance, whether that's through a college website or a career exploration website that feels like a fit for your student. and evaluating those outcomes, taking them more than once because we're all kind of constantly evolving, paying attention to those favorite subjects and courses, paying attention to what I, as a student, like to do in my free time. One of my questions for students is, what do you do when you have an hour of free time? Your phone's dead and sleeping and eating are not an option. So how would you fill that hour? That answer can be more insightful than students often realize. And then of course, college searches, college visits, virtual or in person, exploring cost calculators, because that exploration, from my perspective, should certainly include some knowledge and expectation of what these options might cost. Self-awareness. So what is right for me may not be what my brother chose, my best friend's choosing, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, asking all of your questions. Students have never done this process before. This is a one-time unique process for all of us. So every question truly is valuable. It matters and deserves a good answer that's done with care. And then we're getting into application process. So for sophomore and junior parents on this call, thank you for being here again. I just want to restate, if you haven't heard me say this before, the greatest work you and your student are doing at this time of year, especially for juniors, is working on exploring that list so that as your student comes back to the start of senior year, they feel like ready, right? They're ahead of the game related to like, hey, Miss Murphy, I'm ready to apply to these 3, 5, 7, I like a single digit, but X number of schools. And I'm confident that my list is balanced in the sense of admissibility, cost as it is a factor for me and my family, my outcome goals, etc. So the application process can feel very busy. I tell students often to think of that fall semester like you're going to have an extra class on your schedule, so that they're prepared for maybe 30 to 40 minutes a day of like consideration, thinking, checking their to-do list, reviewing, writing that's required, et cetera, et cetera. Again, in the hopes of meeting that November 1-ish deadline for apps. And then again, we're almost to February and the sun is shining, which is a great thing. But February, March, April, we've had huge batches of decisions come in over the past week from some of our state flagships. So this period of time, February, March, massive evaluation time as far as getting all the decisions back, possibly waiting on a deferment, possibly hearing about a wait list and considering where you go from there, but also getting back, tallying up those merit scholarships, reviewing those financial aid packages from each school. So looking at that true data of where have I been admitted, what is my true cost at each, do I need to circle back and visit these schools or these campuses again? And then how do I move forward towards May 1 in making that decision for my best fit? A lot of students will do a second and sometimes first visit to the campuses they've been accepted to in March and April of senior year. That is okay. I tell students you have probably in some ways more time than you think making your decision. But you also have to remember that like you're continuously evolving. So even if you fell in love with the campus in September of senior year, if you have the chance to take that return visit as an admitted student in the spring of your senior year, that can be just wonderfully powerful and impactful.
Yeah, that makes me feel better.
It's like the trendy water belt right now.
Hi, my buddy Becky just jumped on. Becky, can you mute yourself? Thank you.
I know. Well, look at all the girls.
All right.
Yeah. Can somebody show? So Miss Minkle just got. Just let me know. If it's the end water
Becky,
bottle.
hear me?
And I said,
Where can I buy?
but okay. So look at the difference.
There we go. I can hear. All right. Here we go. So getting back to the slides and kind of my rapid fire presentation, especially for sophomore, junior parents, I think it's always refreshing to kind of evaluate what the roles are in this process. So we have the parent who is the support, safety, truth, presence, trust, all of these kind of safe landings, soft landings for the student. Part of that conversation, the sooner that families can have a conversation around even financial support available or what that looks like. I met with a parent earlier this morning, and he was very clear about the fact that for a couple of years now, when they talk about college, when he has told his children along the way, your mom and I can afford to support you to this amount. Anything past that is on you for loans or personal funding. And so they're, balancing that list on how far will that funding go versus how much is the student willing or able to take on that debt. It's a massive piece today, so I can't help but talk about it when we see student debt in the news all the time, and the idea that the average college student that has attended college is walking around with up to maybe $37,000 in debt. So being ahead of that potential costs can be a powerful place. And the more the student knows about that pathway, really the more confident they are in building that list. I'm going to move over to the counselor role. Again, myself, the CRC team that's here, and then of course your students, amazing LST counselors, they are here to support with accurate information, outreach as needed, availability to support all of these discussions, emails, questions. And again, being that kind of safety net, school, 911, and connector to options and ideas. And then the student, right? Student's the biggest piece of this puzzle. The student is leading this process as far as here's my list, here's how I'm organizing myself, here's how I'm going to meet my deadlines, do all these extra tasks related to the applications. And again, that self-awareness, ability to communicate and advocate for those needs. So that's just a quick review of that. And then I will share these slides, so don't stress about having to, email me back or anything like that. But everything underlined or in red here relates to each of the sections of the process and can help keep you, your family, your student organized, or just serve as an additional resource. So I will certainly be sharing this page because right now it looks a little overwhelming. I do want to highlight, I'm going to take you out. I think the last slide has questions, so that's where we're going to dive into questions. But if I can get back, I'm going to show you very quickly. One of my favorite kind of quick review tools is College Scorecard. So I've talked, if you've been in my office, you've probably heard me talk about it, but I am going to, and let me see, unmute if you are not seeing College Scorecard, because sometimes it doesn't switch screens. Trust that it's working. Okay, so I'm going to click on University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, big trending school of our students. I'm going to click on trendy school. I'm just going to pick two right now. Just show quickly how this kind of breaks down. Okay, so this tool that we're looking at, this College Scorecard, it's how I describe it. It's the government has taken college admissions data that could probably circle the globe multiple times, and they've made it digestible for families, counselors, all the people, right? So you can compare up to 10 schools at a time. I've just picked two for the sake of speed. But it was that easy to search for, click the check mark, it's suddenly on my comparison list. And then I'm going to click on compare schools. And I'm going to quickly see a breakdown. And again, jump in if you're not seeing College Scorecard, because that would be a travesty. Just from a quick glance, you can see average annual costs at University of Illinois, around $14,000. Miami University is around $25,000. Keep in mind, these average costs are going to include, like it defines for you, tuition, living costs, all the things, and it has subtracted average grants and scholarships for federal financial aid recipients. So, so that is going to possibly be an unbalanced view of cost, depending on if you plan to fill out the FAFSA and apply for financial aid, and where you're at, financially as a family. So I'm going to show you some more specifics on that in just a second too. But the other pieces of info that are really nice, I think, especially for parents as a someone who's probably supporting this pathway financially and hoping for a great outcome for your child, you can also see graduation rates compared. So University of Illinois has a bit of a higher graduation rate. I do want to highlight too, these grad rates are based on 8 years of to complete a bachelor's degree. I don't want our students necessarily to take 8 years to graduate. That's the data point, that's the timeline they've decided to use. So I like to make sure parents and families know that, so that you know, you can understand that some of these numbers you'd want them to be definitely higher. Median earnings. So what can my child maybe expect to earn graduating from school? This is a data point that can often help with like, how am I even going to be able to afford to pay back possible student loans, et cetera, et cetera. Keep in mind too, with this median income, this, you know, U of I's number here, $71,000, that is pooling everyone. So computer scientists and teachers are put in the same pool. Obviously, they're not all making $71,000 out of college. So just, again, keeping in mind, this is not major specific. And then quickly, I want to show you, if you keep kind of digging, that average cost can be broken down a little bit more based on family income. So they do have brackets here. One thing I like about this is that if you don't want your student to necessarily like know the absolute details of your income, you can at least share, here's, you know, our family income is in this bracket area. And those average prices do change as income changes. So just keeping in mind, you can dig in a little bit more, and it's another quick glance. And then my last point on College Scorecard is the value of, again, we talked about grad rates. This retention rate is a really big one for me. When my son goes to college, if he chooses to go to college, I'm going to be curious about how many students are returning for their sophomore year. So this is a nice indicator, kind of a comfort piece for parents to see, so that you get a sense of how are students cared for, you know, again, supported, etc. Where's that kind of joy factor, that fit factor in students returning for that second year? All right, so that's one of my favorite resources. I'm going to stop sharing. And I have gone 19 minutes. It's a little longer than I'd like to go, but I am going to now just open this up. Again, I told you this would be a mad dash info sharing. I have not done this before. So from here on out, I'm happy to take questions. Just remember, we are recording. So just please don't share anything too wildly personal that you don't want recorded and or shared with our other participants. Awesome.
This is Ling Ye. Thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
My question is regarding the cost, because the UC apparently costs much less. Has this considered that is in-state tuition, or it's a comparison with Miami on the equal basis?
So it's going, the Illinois cost will have considered everyone, the average cost for students attending, which Illinois has over half the students attending University of Illinois are going to be in-state. But I think it's also important, you know, Illinois is an example of a school that's created a financial support program for low-income students. So, so some students attending based on family income, they may not be paying any tuition because of federal and state supports available. So it does balance all of that in that cost. And that's why I like to break down kind of that income category that gets a little more specific. And then my third resource kind of in this mad dash info sharing would be every school is required by the federal government to offer some kind of net price calculator. Some are going to look more robust and detailed than others, but you can Google net price calculator and it'll take you to a site where you can type in a school name and it takes you then to that exact school calculator. You're going to punch in some information about your student family. And again, some are going to get into the weeds a little more than others on family size, GPA, different things like that, income, assets. And that's going to spit out then for you an estimated cost based on what you shared with that campus. So that's kind of a layered layered pieces to exploring cost. Do this in chunks because it's a lot to process. These costs are absolute. I do this every day and my mind is blown every day. It's wild where, I think University of Chicago is on its way to being a 6-figure cost, within the next 5 to 10 years. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank
That
you very
help? Okay.
Yes, yes. And you are going to send the link to us for the college?
Yes.
We
Yes.
can also get from a website, Google.
Yep, absolutely. I'll post this. I'm gonna definitely share a recording and the slides to our next newsletter. I'll probably post the slides quicker than that to the junior class, Google Classroom, but this info will all get to you for sure in one of my kind of mass mailings.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is your advice, your recommendation for a student who has a good SAT score and is looking at some of these schools and seeing these higher numbers than what she's had so far? What is your recommendation for that? And I remember you giving us like your best in your best world when they would have that SAT like done with.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. So talking about testing, in my dream world as the kind of college counselor here, I really like students to be done with testing before senior year starts. I like it to be checked off. So again, in my dream world, every junior I'm meeting with right now, we're going through the test dates. I'm trying to get those summer dates, if needed, if desired, on their calendar, because you feel a lot more kind of pull in the process when you walk in August, like here's my portfolio of known things. I have my GPA, I have my interest area, I'm undecided. I know I want to go to school in California, whatever, that the combo of things. So that's one piece as far as testing. And then, so testing, 2019 Murphy would tell students, I encourage you to sign up for the ACT and the SAT. And ideally, you're going to know that you're sitting for both, ideally 2 times. So that's that would have been my 2019 guidance. And that gives you a chance to get a taste of what they both are like through that first sitting, feeling like a practice, no pressure. I'm checking this out and seeing how I feel. Comparing those notes and then deciding, the ACT was faster paced, but that suits me. So I'm all in. I'm going to lean into the ACT. I know I've got to take the SAT to graduate from high school. So I'm going to take that one. And again, I'm going to focus on these ACT dates or vice versa. Let me let somebody jump in here. So that would be where I'm at. If students are definitely going to have that SAT from April, the pandemic, COVID shifted, we've got about 70% of schools that are test optional, remaining test optional. I think of Libertyville trending schools, Purdue, we've got plenty of students applying to Georgia, the Florida Publics, Tennessee, Knoxville. Those are the schools that come to mind that have either already decided or recently decided we have to have a test score with your app. So that's kind of one angle. Do my schools have to have it? And then for test optional schools, students are now looking at and being told and considering, I'm going to send a score. I need to send a score if it supports my application. So we have students, I'm saying we because Ms. Bolito at Vernon Hills is on this call. We have students scoring in the 75th, 80th, 90th or above percentiles. And those scores might not currently meet the admitted student profile of some of the schools on their list. So Heather, am I getting to your point?
Yes.
Okay. So I will never personally tell a student to send or not send. I will spend time with that student to say, you're sitting at an X score. And the freshman profile, the most recently admitted class profile, shows that the middle 50 range is X to X. School of thought right now is you want your score to support that app, and you've got to kind of think from behind the curtain. And behind the curtain means these admissions offices they like that their profiles are continuing to kind of gather a shine with these really inflated data points. Because again, these freshman profiles related to test scores are reflecting only the scores that students are submitting. So keep in mind that these test optional schools, U of I, for example, they're admitting 40, 50%, I'm estimating, you're not quoting directly, students without a test score. But the students that are sending are at some campuses, that profile is like 32 to 35. It's wild. So a student that's proud of their score and feels like it supports their application, it's not going to hurt them. And I will circle back to the fact that a test score is never going to be the critical factor in a admit or deny. It is never going to, a perfect ACT is not getting you into computer science at U of I if you don't have the transcript that really supports that perfect score, to flip it around. So bottom line, I don't want students spinning out over testing. If they're tired, if they're done with it, if they feel like I've hit my mark, I feel good about where I'm at, I've got what I want to send, or I'm moving forward test optional, those extra testing Saturdays, sleep in, go for a run, do something productive. But the testing just doesn't run the show in 2023.
Do you still recommend they take it twice, ACT twice and SAT twice?
I think if they can and they're up for that, I think that's a pretty great strategy if it's not burning them out or feeling. I have students sit in front of me, and when I mention that, you can see the air deflate. So it can be very student specific, but I think if it doesn't feel completely like torture, ultimately it can only be a piece to add and consider. And remember, those test scores are your students' property. There are a handful of schools out there, Georgetown in particular, that is very persnickety and says, we want all your scores. But in the big scheme of things, the scores that you send are the scores you decide to send, if any. Thanks for bringing that topic up. It's a hot one. It's murky. Remind your students to ask questions about it because it feels like a lot. Other questions about any and all? I'm not sure how many folks I've met with your student, but I'll just do a quick kind of PR push too. Juniors I have primary part of my calendar this spring is for junior intro meetings. So we get to talk through a lot of these things with your junior, and parents are welcome to those intro meetings as well. And then part of that is me taking notes and doing a search on behalf of your junior to kind of help expand some of that thinking around the list and also narrow those 3,500 schools down to a manageable number to explore. So that's one thing. Any sophomore parents on here, just letting you know, before the end of the year, sophomores will be invited to a Google Classroom that's based out of the College and Career Resource Center to kind of help them get a jump start into junior year. And I think I'm going to be able to schedule some kind of sophomore little sliver time meetings with students and parents on some Mondays in May. So look ahead to that, and those meetings will give us a real sliver of time to just kind of talk through how high school's gone so far and what to look forward to junior and senior year.
I have another question.
Good.
Again, yeah. My daughter is in sophomore year.
Okay, good.
Because we moved from China, so majority of her education was in China in Mandarin. So I'm a little bit concerned with her testing, but I'm more concerned with actually extracurricular activities, because I heard these are much more heavily considered by universities, especially good schools, in terms of what leadership activities you have had and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's. Go ahead.
Are we going to encourage students to start to write those things up? Because the writing process is a management or organization process for them. So I wonder, our Liberty Bay High School has some sort of activity to
Yes, that's a great. So I am kind of learning as I live in my first year here at Libertyville. I think we introduce and we have time, counselors and myself, it's a pretty minimal amount of time to walk and talk students through some activities in our college platform, which is called Naviance. But as we send information out and as we do some, especially junior year programming, that is certainly something that comes up even in individual meetings, talking through activities. And it's a great brainstorm to kind of do each year. So even if your daughter comes home tonight, you can say, hey, Miss Murphy said we should even just make a list of things you've done since you started high school. And that's an amazing place for parents to support and play a part, because our students forget the magical things, the amazing things they do. Here's the school of thought. Your students likely going to use the Common application by the time they're a senior, which is a third-party portal that processes applications for over 1,000 campuses out there. The Common App allows 10 activity spaces. So I tell students it's like an inverted triangle, like greatest investment, most leadership, most meaning, kind of not to least, but like, where do I spend the most of my time, down to what did I possibly do freshman and sophomore year and then maybe move out of. And I will tell you too, you don't need 10. There's students that are involved in 3 different kinds of band, and they do, and they're in dance, and they're in 2 or 3 school clubs. There's no time for 10, right? Like the schedule fills up. So when we think about activities, I also like to remind students, I'm asking about what you do outside of school. It does not have to be sponsored by the school, sponsored by the community, sponsored by church, etc. I had met with a student recently who reads like over 100 books a year. And I'm like, that is an activity that you're going to list in your applications, independent reading. And then she's going to describe how voracious of a reader she is, because that says a lot about that person. So if you're the community dog walker, I always use that because I'm like, if I trust some of my dogs, you're a great human. So all the things outside of school that fill your students' time count and should be considered. And then, if it's over 10, which could happen, we've got to curate and decide. And things like National Honor Society, that's one that comes up a lot. Sometimes I encourage students to move that to like listing it as an honor instead of an activity, and then you save a space. So there's little tips and tricks that we'll share and kind of navigate with them along the way. I don't like to put a should around activities, but I do think our students should be able to answer that question of like, how do you spend your time outside of the school day? I play basketball, I do independent movie critiques, and I work part-time at Dairy Queen in the summer, right? Like being able to narrate who they are outside of the class. And I mentioned Dairy Queen, part-time jobs, students forget. And part-time jobs on a college application are a massive gold star that just say so much about skills, time management, again, who that student is. So those are big and often overlooked in a shocking way. So.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Anything else? Taking notes. All right. Well, I'll hang here if anyone wants to hang out and ask more questions. I promise to leave this open till 1, and I'll do that. Again, slides, information will all be shared. I appreciate all of you showing up for this test run of a drop-in check-in time. And yeah, I'll hang out for any questions that kind of come up as we linger, but it's just nice to see names and faces.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Estelle, I think, will I see you later? Thanks, guys.
ask a question that might be a little off topic?
Okay, I love it.
I have well, not totally, but my son is considering a gap year.
Yeah.
So I was just curious what your advice is in terms of the college search, proceeding with that college search now, as opposed to letting the gap year be part of the determining factor there, and what your thoughts are about that.
So I completely support the search and the thinking. Two big things come to mind. I'm big on asking the student, like, what does a gap year mean to you? So having a plan is meaningful. And then I will often share with them, there's a ton of data out there that shows students that end up attending school post gap year earn a higher average GPA, switch majors less. You know, the year can be wildly valuable for so many reasons. So I love the consideration of it, and I'm happy to support that. On a flip side, I really, really encourage students to still build a list and consider applying with their class as seniors, so that they can then request or pursue a deferment or deferral and kind of hold their spot maybe at the school that feels right to them. And they know after my gap year, you know, August of next year, I've got a place to be and a plan in place. It can be tough to do kind of this adventurous or work-centric year while you're also trying to apply to colleges, and you don't suddenly have that school support or that person and peers kind of in the same boat. So I think trying to balance the interests and the options, it can only help to move forward with a few apps as for consideration. And then again, by the time senior year concludes, the student may have said, I'm ready, I'm eager to go, or I really need to pursue this deferment, hold my space, confirm financial aid is going to be in place, and then go savor the year knowing that that comfort zone is built in. Does that help, Rachel?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And then just to follow up to what you just said, is that fairly common for schools to grant a deferment, or is that on an individual basis? Or
it's kind of an individual basis. Like NYU has, you know, a process outlined on their website, so they see it. Some schools are going to obviously process more than others. So it would be a question. I met with a student last week considering a gap year, and I'm like, hey, when you come in, maybe even in the fall or even this spring, if you are visiting schools or exploring schools online, that's a question. That's a great question for the reps that come in or the admissions office that you're connecting with virtually, to ask about how they support a gap year process. It's not wildly complicated, but those pieces of can get, you do want to confirm, I want to confirm my space, obviously, but also I've, you know, earned the presidential scholarship. Is that money going to be saved for me for the next year as well? So some of those individual questions.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the great question.
Thank
Hi.
you. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else? Good at the cause.
I will check out too. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here. I think I'll wrap it up, but I'm gonna save the recording. I'll get everything posted, you know, pretty quickly. And if you're anxious to get the slides, feel free to send me an email and I'll get those out to you in the next day or two. I can repost my email. It's Erin Murphy at Erin.Murphy@d128.org. So if you want to follow up with anything, feel free to do so. All right, enjoy the sunshine. It's thank goodness we have the sunshine in today. Helps.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.